Hello, everyone, and welcome to My Music. Now, I've got to preface today's episode by saying that giraffes are actually my youngest boy's favourite animal. Okay, so I thought we'd get that in there for the start. I will ask my guest about his preference for giraffes in a minute, because he's in in a band that are called Giraffes. But we will welcome Aaron to come and talk to us about his life in music shortly after this little break from the wonderful people at Analog Trash. Stay with us.
Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop.
Aaron, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for asking me to be here.
Let's start with giraffes. As I said, my youngest loves giraffes, and you know what? There's one thing whenever I go to a zoo and see giraffes that I love about them as creatures, which is that they can just see above everything else. They get a really amazing perspective on life. And I just wondered, is that one of the reasons why you called it giraffes, or is there, just kind of like, no real reason at all? It was just a cool name.
Yeah, well, I would love to be able to be snarky and say that I just love looking down on everybody, but I didn't come up with the name. Damien, the guitarist, came up with the name years before I even joined the band. So I kind of walked into this.
But it's fitting, do you not think, in terms of what the music you make and the sort of topics that you cover in the songs, in that it's...
yeah, perhaps. I think that there is something to a name, you know what I mean? And we've weirdly, like, our brains and everybody else's brains have grown to sort of connect the concept of giraffes to the things that we do. There was an SNL bit like about 15 or 16 years ago, back when Andy Samberg was on there. And it was like some like turbo crazy ultra male metal giraffes. And it was like just for the animal giraffes.
Yeah.
And I like to think that was because someone did drugs with them without realizing it one night. And it just sort of got in their brain, which would be, that's on brand for us. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, listen, take me all the way back to the beginning for you in terms of music. Where did it start?
Music or with the band?
No, music for you. Where did it start? Like, did you grow up in a musical home? Was there, were there a group of friends that were particularly into a type of music or whatever that influenced, where you hung out and what you listened to? Or
well, everyone in my extended family is relatively musical, especially like on my father's side, which are a bunch of like Transylvanian dirt farmers. So like, my grandfather would have like the violin under the bed that he would pull out every once in a while without tuning it and just like rip something off if he was particularly, like, I think, soused at the moment.
Wow. By the way, just to interrupt very briefly there, that's a great name for a band right there, by the way, if anyone wants to nick it. Transylvanian Dirt Farmers.
Yeah.
So the clocks are whirring now.
yeah, if the shoe fits. So yeah, my mother was also like a bit of a pianist. My father was like a total stoner blues hound, so he would sit in the living room on Sunday mornings and smoke a bowl and play harmonica, listening to like old Delta blues and stuff like that. I always had a little bit of an ear. I always had like I to this day I have 5 or 6 songs going through my head at any given moment. My son has it. I catch him in his unguarded moments just humming random things to himself as they morph. So it's just something that I've had. I put it out of my life for many years.
Okay.
I did not want to be.
I'm going to get quite personal there for a minute, because that trait of actually having a lot of songs going around your head, that's quite a neurodiverse trait. Have you been diagnosed at all? Yeah.
My children have been diagnosed with ADHD. They have the two different kinds. Like my daughter has inattentive and my
Yeah,
son
yeah.
has combined. I don't know how they designate it on your side of the pond. It's probably a little different. But for me, I was never diagnosed, but you watch all the social media videos and I'm like, oh, 1,000%. And what's more is I was actually having this conversation with a friend of mine, Timo, who's in a band called Netherlands at our last show. They opened up for us. And he's very, very ADHD, you know what I mean? And he had just been diagnosed and he's like, it explains everything. It makes so much sense to me. And I sort of looked around the room at all of the other musicians that were there with us. And I was like, yeah, we all have it, don't we? Right? Like,
Yeah.
that's why we play music, right? Like
Yeah.
we're self-medicating for the dopamine we get from playing music to sort of like fill out our brain chemistry a little bit.
Yeah,
So,
no, absolutely. Yeah. Having just sat through an ADHD course all morning here. I mean, yeah, it's that one kind of defining feature as well, which is that, you know, if you are interested in it, if it's something you love and you can focus on it, you'll focus on it. Anything else? Whoa.
yeah.
I'm going to struggle. I'm
Yeah.
really going to struggle to stay focused on this. So, you know, and that's the thing with something like music as well. Something that a lot of people don't necessarily understand, but it's so obvious when you think about it, is that beyond the cool parts of music and actually getting tunes out there and whatever, there's so much grunt work that's required to actually make stuff happen and happen well. You know, learning to play, learning to sing, learning to breathe, learning to reframe words so that they actually, you know, don't suck completely. All of those things take enormous amounts of energy and effort. So if you're not into it, if your brain's not into it, you ain't doing it.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah. So when did you first start writing? When did you know, the sort of the move from sort of listening to this and growing up in that environment and having it surround you and you know, I assume even at that age that the songs were whirring around. But when did you suddenly realize that you could actually realize this into something?
So this is embarrassing, but you know, I rebelled. I guess I kind of like mini rebelled against my parents. I wanted nothing to do with anything that they were listening to. You know what I mean? And
that's common.
Yeah, and I fell completely in love with really early rap and hip hop. Like when I was about 8 or 9 years old, like Houdini was coming out, like Run DMC, like that first generation of breakthrough rap. I became obsessed with this stuff. I knew every single like lyric to all of Ice Cube and NWA's and Public Enemy's first album. Like I was obsessed, and that was what was in my head at all times. And I was also really obsessed with the beat making process and all that sort of stuff. So the first writing I ever did was me trying to write raps, which were terrible. And the first music that I ever really tried to create that wasn't just banging on a piano and sort of like, you know, calming my brain was on those old double tape decks where you could sort of copy tapes back and forth. I remember trying to, I don't know what happened to this cassette, but I remember taking snippets from like, I think a couple of Pink Floyd songs and like maybe a marching band. And I was like trying to splice these loops together into like this weird, and I got something out of it. And then I was going to write a rap on top of it, but it was, the longer it went on, the more it went kind of out of rhythm, you know, because I didn't know. Yeah, because there was no grid. But that was sort of my first experience on making music and sound on a recorded medium. So
I love that. I used to enjoy that immensely, playing with cassette and stuff, and later on actually with proper 1/4-inch tape as well on like Ewers and stuff like that, because it was actually so very visceral. You know, you actually like ended up putting the tape around you and getting it everywhere, and then having to get like tape and, you know, and mark it with like China graph pencils and all of this sort of malarkey.
Yeah.
As that's an interesting little one. Perhaps we'll come back to that in a bit more detail in a moment, which is, you know, how technology wise that may have like changed things for you going forward. But I can totally get that. Did you ever then suddenly realize in the middle of all of that, when you were listening to all of this rap, that suddenly actually some of that stuff that my dad used to listen to and whatever, that's in there?
Yeah. I started.
Oh my word! Like the that blues line is actually in that.
Yeah. No, I remember a friend of mine I think he went to LA for some family thing, and he came back from LA with, I think it was like before it was released, like it was like a demo cassette of Cypress Hill's first record that they made themselves. He said he bought it out of the back of like a car,
Yeah.
right? And I remember listening to that for about 6 months before it dropped. I was like in high school and I was obsessed because like that was the first time that I could really pick out, like they were really like the samples Muggs was pulling out like deep, weird blues notes and stuff that were like really, really chopped up in a sort of like, what was it? Terminator X style, like the Public Enemy style. And I was obsessed with that sound and that like that vibe and that method. You know, I'm sure I looked absolutely ridiculous, like walking around with my stupid fisherman's hat and like black baggy clothes in, I don't know what the hell it was, like, you know, in Ohio, but you know, you do what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting enough, just get that connection in there as well. My old bandmate from my first band, Troy Miller, who was on this a little while back, he recently orchestrated Cypress Hill at the Royal Albert Hall. Did you hear that?
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Yeah. I saw that because it was everybody. The hook on the line on the news was, it's Simpsons have come to life, right? Like,
that's it. Yeah.
Great.
There you go. What a day! What a day! We never thought we'd see that, Cypress Hill and an orchestra, but it happened.
So glad it happened.
Yeah. No, that was really good. So what was the then turning point for you creating the kind of sound that you've got now? What you know, where did you develop your voice from, I guess, more than anything?
Yeah, I can't take that much. Well, I mean, I can't take credit that much for the Giraffes because I basically, as I was getting older, like, you know, I played in a couple of like whatever high school bands that were like a lot of fun, but just friends hanging out in the basement and smoking some pot and making noise. And when I went to college, I started to actually discover punk rock and like underground rock and stuff that I didn't really know existed in like my blue collar like world. And weirdly enough, I went to Kent State for undergrad, and weirdly enough, everything I saw at Kent State basically I just saw repeated in inferior forms over the next 20 years everywhere else. For whatever reason, that like scene of like art kids in Ohio was way ahead of the curve in terms of like styles and mixing up styles and innovating, doing weird stuff. So a lot of those people from that scene have gone on to do things like, for example, Earthquaker Pedals. Like I remember the owner and founder of it, Jamie Stillman. I remember like hanging out with him when he was, you know, trying to be like a greaser and like had a big you know, gelled up pompadour and was playing like an SG and, you know, in the gym in an excellent like noise rock band called Party of Helicopters and a few others. But during that time, I wasn't playing music. I was like, music is just for me to see and have fun. And I was going to be an artist, a sculptor. So I wasn't making noise. I was making things. And then I got a partial scholarship to escape Ohio and go to NYU, which was enough to get me out of Ohio. And I went to NYU and I started doing art there in a studio, and suddenly I realized, oh shit, it costs a lot of money to try to like have any space to yourself. Like buying materials, buying wood, buying metal, buying anything here is incredibly expensive. Transporting that stuff is incredibly expensive. I don't know how I can afford to make anything. So then I had to get inventive, and I started just doing weird videos, which led to doing weird performances, which led to me introducing a friend's band at CBGB's, which led to the Giraffes seeing me and asking me to join the band.
That is such a story, isn't it? But that it's so common though as well, that so many people, so really, and we do hear this story over and over again in a way. If you're creative inside and out, it's really just about where you end up. It's just,
and you never know. Yeah, like you never know where you're gonna wind up. Like some people just got to do it, and you got to do it.
Yeah. You literally, I mean, I think everybody's got a story somewhere along the lines of you just physically end up in a place and things just kind of make sense in that place at that time.
Yeah.
I remember when I got to university, my start in radio was I got to Sunderland, which is where I was going to be at university, but I was from the Bedfordshire area. Now anyone that knows their geography in the UK knows that that's miles away.
Okay.
And so I wasn't going to be popping home for the weekend. Right, you're talking 5-6 hours in a car or whatever. And so I was just stuck there, and I was there, as I say, well before university started. And I just heard that there was this radio station opening up, like a proper radio station opening up, and I just thought, I'll go down there and I'll just hang around outside and talk to the people that were carrying all of this equipment in and setting this station up. And someone said to me, "Oh, are you here for one of the jobs?" And I don't know why, I just said yes.
Yeah,
as you do.
Yep.
And then they said, "What can you do?" And I just said, "Edit." And I suppose it was just really going back to thinking about my early days of trying to make music like you, playing around with tape. And I was thinking, well, how hard can that be?
Yeah.
I was so fortunate because they were importing in Australian equipment. And so when it came round to it, because no one had used this kind of equipment in the UK, they said, "Oh, we're going to have to put everybody on a course so that you know how to use this Australian equipment." So they taught me to edit. So no one knew that I couldn't edit. And there we went, But that's what it's like, isn't it? I mean, and then I got into it. The band that I got into at university, I did sound for them. They came off stage. They said, "What do you think?" I said, "You were great, but the singer sucked."
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize at the time that the singer at the time was the girlfriend of the main guitarist. But they were nice about it, and they said, "Oh, well, actually, yeah, she's leaving the band because she doesn't like it." So we're practicing next week, and that was it, And I think that these things just happen, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's actually because you're available. And when I say available, not just like you're available in terms of the being physically in that space, but you're available in terms of it's the right moment for you to be creative in a different way. Yeah, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. There was that thing that went around like a few years ago. It was like handwritten on a piece of paper, I think from Thelonious Monk. I could be wrong. It's from some jazz guy. It was like rules for being in the band. You know what I mean? And like number 1 was like, be on the scene. Like if you're not on the scene, no one's gonna know you exist. So be on the scene. So you can be in people's head. Yeah, just be around.
Yeah, there's so many stories of that. Many stories of that. I mean, you think like over here, you know the famous stories of people like, Boy George from Culture Club, who used to. That's right. Used to be like the cloakroom person in the club where all of the singers hung out. So he was there. And then one day someone went, "Oh, we've got a band. Do you want to sing?" There you go. Yeah, of course I do. Next thing you know, we got a number 1. It is the way it goes. Talk to us about this new album. So When was this album put together?
It consists mostly of songs that are pandemic and post-pandemic songs, right? So like stuff that we've been working on since roughly 2020, you know. So
that's quite a long period of time now. The thing is, we talk about the pandemic now, and it's like so fresh because it was so, you know, life-changing in everybody's minds. It almost feels like it was yesterday, but I think sometimes we kind of forget that.
Well, no, everybody's memory holding it. Like everyone does not want to remember it. Like it's as if it didn't happen for a lot of folks.
Yeah,
there's a million people missing here, you know. So it's deeply surreal.
Yeah, but you know, it's you know, we'll be looking at 5 years and plus soon, and you know, that's quite a long period of time. So the incubation period for this is quite long.
Yeah.
So in terms of what got written, was it then, if you've been putting this together over that long period, was it quite easy to kind of then bring it together as a cohesive piece, or you know, or did you then struggle to like try and make sense of it over that period in terms of, you know, because there's quite a lot of change happening now over the last 5 years.
Yeah. Well, it's the time that we're pretty slow to begin with. And it's not because we don't have ideas. It's because we have too many ideas. So it's really, most of the effort comes in
weeding
sort of finding out like what goes and what stays, and cutting things back and cutting and cutting and cutting. Because Damien, the guitarist, is like a perpetual fountain of just riffs and ideas. And
I'm going to say, is that in actual whole songs, or is that in just like bits of ideas for songs?
Well, all right, here, I'll walk you through the process. So typically it's not always like this, but typically the process looks like this. Damien goes, all right, I wrote this song. And then he plays something that has like about 85 parts and lasts 30 minutes.
Wow.
And it's just this really, really like he writes and thinks like a composer thinks, right? So he is in love with like all of these like little minutia things and stuff like that happen melodically in the lines and tricks and drops and all that sort of stuff, which is great. But it's difficult to like tell a story on top of that usually. So then typically what happens is that he'll write this big thing. I'll go, okay. And I'll be afraid to like start picking it apart and hurting people's feelings. So I'll hang back. And then him and Andrew, the drummer, and Hannah, the bassist, will start working on it. And Hannah usually has a lot of like good ideas and stuff like that. And they start getting it to, you know, something that they are starting to like. And then when I can't avoid it anymore, I have to like come in and go, okay, and be an asshole. Go like, you know, can we chop this, chop that, chop that? Can we use this for another song? Can we use that for another? These are great things, but can we save it for later? Save that for later. And then we fight. And once I get it to like a point where I can actually use it, then I take it home, and then I'll try to like, if I have something in mind, I'll write it down immediately, and we'll do it in practice. And sometimes that works. And that used to be the way early on that we would do it more often than not. But that was also when we were practicing like 3 times a week, and we're dads now. We can't do that anymore. So I'll take it home and I'll try to like put something together on it on my own. And then I'll work on it until I feel okay with it. And if I've done my job correctly, then Damien will be less upset. You know what I mean? He'll listen, go, oh, this is cool. And if all those things line up, then we can start drilling it and taking it to the next level.
I can see why this takes so long.
Yeah.
So kind of give a synopsis of that process in a few words. So basically what happens is he writes a symphony.
Yep.
It then turns into kind of like a prog rock classic. And then eventually it gets honed down into sort of like a post-punk anthem.
Yeah. I'm always looking to try to get something that's like hooky and memorable out of it. I'm not necessarily looking to make pop songs, but I just want something that is going to like
hit you in the face.
Yeah, I want something that's going to be memorable. Like my my general rule of thumb is that in the Giraffes, the melody is the guitar, and the vocals are sort of the counter melody or the harmony on top of the guitar. But vocals have lyrics, so the lyrics are also another label that we can hook you with, you know, and get into you with that. So I try to do my best with that if I can, but it's not super
well, it works.
important.
Do you know what? It really works. So what you end up with is you end up with these songs that really do punch you in the face, but then have these wonderful moments of beauty.
That's the idea. Yeah. Like my thinking of like loud rock and roll is that it should be like big heroic sculpture in a certain way, right? Like Richard
And then you notice the fine detail.
Right. Yeah. Like they have to be big and menacing and heavy and like somehow like feel like they could do you harm in if you weren't careful around them. But then at the same time, they have to be something that you want to inhabit and that say something for you or to you, or, you know, have use rather than just being, I don't know, for like a word, cool.
I love that. So when you finish an album, do you then look at it and go, actually, I could sculpt that to go with that?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, but then so when we're prepping for shows, like there's often like a lot of talk about working transitions between songs and stuff like that, and coming up with like parts to go from one song into the next, or, you know, that sort of thing. Now, we're not as crazy with that as, say, someone like John Spencer is. John Spencer is, you know, like he is an editor to the max when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah,
so, yeah. Like we think about it, but then again, like, you know, I heard a story about like Fela Kuti where like he would just drill a song and drill a song and drill a song and drill a song until like he thought it was perfect. And then he would record it with his band and then they would never play it again. Ever. And his theory was like, why should I play it again? It's done. It's perfect.
Yeah.
I have another song if you want to hear it, you know, and that's perverse, but it's kind of incredible. Like you know, like that's kind of,
it's quite inspiring. It's quite inspiring in a way. Yeah. But then again, coming from the sculptor background, I mean, you'll also be very au fait with, you know, the way that a lot of sculptors work these days, because they have to move their big, especially big pieces around the world, and that's not always necessarily viable, etc. So there's quite a lot of sculptors, famous sculptors, especially in this country, who, you know, create a piece and then have like the, if you like, the instructions for the piece, and then give the instructions to a you know, the next exhibition space, and people will build it up and they're coming to make sure that it's there. And I suppose, to me, a lot of music travels a bit like that. You know, you create this version of it, and actually once it's out in the world, you might then take a version of it on the road, but also other people might pick it up and put their version of it in a
I think that like three things with that. One, when I was in grad school, I went to school with guys who are now some of the best art handlers in the world, who handle like the biggest, like most expensive shit. And so I know a little bit of the logistics of what goes into that, and it is unbelievably crazy. That's a whole thing we could talk about for hours. But anyway, aside from that, I think that like, because everything is becoming basically remixed culture, like you can take any song that you want and sort of stem it out on your phone, take those pieces and put them into something else and dump it into an AI, turn it into something else completely that you can just play with your friends, aside from, you know, like turbo DJing. Like you can chop and screw anything basically.
Yep.
It's weirdly putting us in a place that's more similar to a world when music was distributed on sheets of paper. You know, like it didn't really exist. It was just sort of like an idea that everybody came together to do. And I kind of feel like we might be heading more towards that. It's also because like you can't make money touring, you can't make money selling music, you can't make money. it's becoming more of just sort of like a communal ritual again, which has its pluses and minuses. It does have a certain purity to it, which is nice. I mean, it also, I mean, these are human beings who need to pay bills. So like, come on, guys. The Spotify guy should be hung upside down and beat with a few sticks. But, you know, capitalism capitalized.
I guess it's an interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, what we're seeing is a world now where, as you say, very few musicians are making money out of doing the music, right?
Yeah.
So they're learning how to make money out of the other parts of their life, whatever that is, and maybe just and in some ways, maybe using music as either just an outlet or as a conduit into some of the other parts of their life. You know, it can be something that just draws people into a conversation. The main thing I think is a currency in the world at the moment is conversation.
I think you're right. Yeah.
I think dialogue and conversation and quest for knowing is a currency, and therefore maybe, you know, something of, you know, when you put something out there in terms of art, that's you having a dialogue with the world. And it might be that you can monetize that in some way, because actually it might, and the amount of musicians that I've had on here, including some fairly famous musicians who actually have made them or start to make their money now because they lecture, or they've written a book, or they have a podcast, or they, you know, they're involved in some kind of community movement or something or other, and they're paid to be a spokesperson for this, or you know, and that's because, you know, what the art does is it starts the dialogue that they then want to be part of. That's maybe where we're going. So there you go.
I just think of, like, what's the dude from The Darkness's name? He's the one who pops up on my feed most of the time, and he'll just be talking about Justin. Yeah, that's it, Justin.
His podcast is great, right?
I haven't heard the podcast. I only see him on like the socials, but you know, like, it's obvious he's got a team of people who've got cameras and mics, and like, you know, they're just around, and like, you know, I get it. He's a charming dude who's like funny, and if you like the music, then why wouldn't you watch it? Of course you're going to watch it.
I think what he's done very, very well, and you know, you could say that kind of started with people like Jules Holland and whatever over here as well, you know, who, you know, I bet if you ask a whole load of young people, they wouldn't even realize that he once played in Squeeze. They wouldn't know that. He used to play in a band. Check out Cool for Cats. But the thing is that what those people have done is they've used their voice, and actually they're making their music, and they use that as a vehicle for people to go, oh, who's that over there? And it works both ways then, because typically then what happens is that people will find them because of the music, but people will find the music because of the voice.
Yeah.
And what the voice is saying. So, you know, if you can talk like he does, if you can talk about other people's music all day long, and actually it then sells more of your own records, that's great. Yeah. That's clever, you know. And he does it very well. Let's not say that. You, sir, could obviously start your own line in berets, because that suits you very well.
What are we talking, clothes?
Yeah.
What?
This on your head.
Berets. I misheard. I thought you said barrows. Berets. Yes.
Berets. Yeah. If anyone that manufactures those wants to get in touch with Aaron, and let him know. You know,
preferably like some Burkina Faso, like. decolonialist, like leftist, communist type stuff. Yeah, let's do this.
That would be fine. That would be fine. Listen, just so that everybody knows, that the album fully out now? Is it available to download, etc.? So yeah, just give the details of where's the best place to get that.
Probably the best place to get it would be on our Bandcamp page, because that's coming to us. But of course, it's everywhere else. It's on the Spotify.
Watch out for Bandcamp Friday, folks.
That's right. That's right.
That's always a great.
It's called Cigarette, so look for it.
Yeah, go out there, have a look at it. If you've listened to the conversation today, folks, and you want to hear what a symphony turned prog rock masterpiece turned punk rock alt pop tune sounds like, then you need to go and check out the album. It's as simple as that, really. And why wouldn't you? Because you know that's
I've never even thought of it that way. But yeah, you're like, you just taught me something about the way that it works. It literally goes from chamber music to prog rock to punk rock, and that's all I'm the one dragging it down into the mud here. Like, you know what I mean?
But it's cool.
That's my fault. I have to take responsibility for it.
Well, maybe one at some point, you know, he might get his way, and you might produce something that goes the other way. Maybe you might start with a set of punk rock songs and then turn them into a chamber full chamber album. We need to get Troy back from playing with Cypress Hill to get involved with that. That would be great.
Right.
Troy, if you're listening, there's a great project, isn't it? We'll take a Giraffes potential album and turn it into a symphonic piece. That would be marvelous, wouldn't it? You've been an absolute pleasure to talk to, sir. Thank you so much for joining me today. Folks, I hope you've enjoyed that conversation too. Do go out and check out the music now, because that's what this is all about. Otherwise, you know, what's the point of us being here? If you've enjoyed that, please do share it with your friends and family and all of that sort of thing as well. We'll be back with more of the same very soon. Until then, bye for now.